Welcome to the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lampson. If this is your first time listening or your 50th time listening, this is what to expect on this episode. We dive into the concepts of developing your leadership toolbox. Why do you need this? You need this in any situation to help manage, lead, and control, and ultimately win. How do you do that? You can't use the same form of leadership in everything you do. So every episode, we dive into my leadership philosophy. We dive into the story and the background of the person we're talking to. And we also dive into some leadership traits I have accrued throughout the years. And then we also follow it up with a book review at the end. So you're getting a wide range of leadership topics and traits that you can add to your kit. So without further ado, let's go into the recap of this episode. And afterwards, if you love it, like it, share it, follow it, give us some feedback because we're only just getting started. We're back. I'm Manny Lampson, your host of the Non-Standard Podcast. On today's episode, I have a great friend of mine from Dyess Air Force Base, Stephen Schroll. He is a Staff Sergeant Select in the military. He enlisted when he was 36 after getting his college degree in 2008, working for another company for 11 years. He decided not to get complacent anymore. We talk about a lot of great stuff on this episode. We talk about fathers, honor guard that he does in the military, transparency, focusing on clear goals, and just how all of that he has applied in his first 3 years in the military and is straight crushing it. He was recommended for me from a great friend, so whenever somebody's recommended to me, I always reach out to him. And I know Schroll. I've worked with him before. I've worked out with him. He's a hard worker and leading by example. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. And if you like anything, share it, save it, follow it. Keep supporting us. Keep supporting the podcast. It's been a great journey so far going into the first year. All right, let's get the show on the road. Welcome back, everybody. It's live. We're ready to go. It is Friday morning here, and we got another great episode for you. I'm excited because my man Schroll doesn't think he has what it takes to be on this podcast. And I tell a lot of people, you may not think it, but everybody has a story, man. Everybody has something they've done or they're doing or they're about to do that's going to resonate with somebody else or motivate other people. And heck, it's motivated me just seeing what you've done here at Dyess, you know. And when your name was recommended to me from somebody else, like I knew like there's something there, you know, like it's not just me seeing what you're doing. Other people are seeing it too. So without further ado, Schroll, we'll get started. You know, we start off with the 3 H's: hometown, some heroes, and a hardship. On to you.
All right, hometown. Hometown is always an interesting question. Everybody asks you that in the military, and I always just say the Gulf Coast because my dad was in the military, but somehow he stayed in the Gulf Coast the entire time. He was in the Navy for 10 years, and we were in Pensacola that entire time. And then when he came over to the Air Force, he went to Keesler, Moody, Keesler. So first place I remember is Pensacola. Then we moved when he came to Keesler. We went over to Gulfport, Biloxi, Bay St. Louis area, right there on the coast. And then I actually went to college in Mobile, Alabama. So Gulf Coast the whole time. So for people from the Gulf Coast, they kind of get that. From people who aren't, they're like, "Oh, my hometown is this," and it's like kind of hard because it all kind of melts together, you know. And so I like the Gulf Coast. Obviously, I've traveled, but this is the first time I've been outside of the Gulf Coast as far as living goes. So it's definitely an experience. As far as heroes go, heroes are a big one for me. Because I mean, you know, there's so many different options, and I thought a lot about it when you mentioned it. But always the top of my list is my father. And I could go on and on about that. You know, growing up, I know everybody thinks that their parents, their fathers, you know, Superman, yada yada yada, and I was no different. But the older I got, the more I talk to friends and I learn about how their parents were, or when, you know, my friends started having kids and you know, learning about their struggles as a parent. It really it just cements that to me, that how well my father did, because I can't imagine. My dad was 20 when he had me, and I cannot imagine having a 19-year-old right now. Right, that blows my mind. You know, so the ability that he did everything, and by extension, you know, like I said, my father's my hero, but also fathers in general. You know, again, the older I get, the more I see the value and the importance of having a good father. that's one of the reasons I love a lot of your content so much. Like anytime I see the little shorts where you're doing stuff with your kids, you're talking about how important it is. Or even when, I went to tech school with a guy who unfortunately was going through divorce, but, he's fighting for, custody of his kid. He's trying to be in his kid's life. And, too often there's that image of, fathers abandoning their kids. Oh, I don't care. That they're deadbeat dads, and that always hurts me because, I know, and I'm not saying they're not. There are absolutely deadbeat dads who, that's terrible. But I know too many men who want to be in their children's lives,
Yeah.
and it's so important. So my father, and like I said, I can go on and on about him, but fathers in general. And that's definitely one of my biggest heroes. Second one, it was a little more difficult to choose because there's, like I said, there's so many options, right? I've got some amazing females in my life. My mother's very loving. My godmother is an angel. She is, everything my father is not, right? Everything my father lacks, my godmother has. His sister, and I love her so much. But for my second hero, I chose my sensei, and by extension, teachers in general. So my sensei, I actually started training with him when I was a junior in high school in 2001, and it's so funny. He fills a very fatherly role as well, in my opinion. Obviously, not just to me, but for everybody he's instructed over the years. There's a little internet meme thing that pops around every now and then in the karate community where they talk about what you're paying for when you go and you start training with an instructor, and what you pay for in a sensei. And and they say, the list goes on and on about, it's not just instructing in the martial arts, it's also, life advice. It's all these things that are so important and go along with it. So like I said, my sensei, but by extension, teachers in general, I have a huge love for teachers because they are shaping the future. So.
Yeah, I'll follow up with a couple of what you just said. So I'm in the same boat as you, right? Like, I have a very good relationship with my dad. I didn't start seeing a lot of the role model stuff, hero stuff, until one obviously when I became a parent, but then also hearing from other friends, right, and other people I've worked with that didn't have that relationship, and I'm like, man, dude, like it's important. And like obviously my dad lives here in Abilene with us, and so every episode I drop on when the guest talks about their father, and I'm like, man, it's cool to see it's still very consistent, right? It's still very important. It's still there, like, man, I think like 80% of the guys, or they've all been guys so far except for one, but 80% have said their dad is one of the heroes, which is good. It's like, okay, that is still there. It's not lost. It's not like it fell back. And I didn't start realizing my dad's leadership stuff until later in life when I started learning about leadership. And it's funny, I was talking to my dad one day, and I was talking about the 80-20 rule. I was like, Dad, do you know about the 80-20 rule? I was like, yeah, son, I worked at a tire shop. I did all this. I was like, oh, well, I didn't know you knew about that, like, and I don't think he had to teach me that when I was in high school. I probably wouldn't have known what he was talking about. Yeah. But it was cool to see that leadership pop out of him as I asked it to him from more of like a leadership role, not a father's son. And then you talked about senseis and teachers, like my other role models and heroes are my coaches in high school. Like they were fathers to me. Even though I had a good relationship with my dad, they filled that role of some of the stuff, like you said, like your godmother does, like my coach did that. And you hit a huge point. Coaches don't just coach, or same as teachers, right? They're doing stuff outside of that. Like, I remember my coaches, I don't remember them for their coaching. It was what they taught me about outside of football. Mm-hmm. How to shake hands, how to acknowledge people by yes, sir, no, sir. Like the stuff I still do today. And so that's where I look at coaching and coaches like you look at teachers. Mm-hmm. Like all of my coaches, all the kids of my coaches, or coaches of my kids, I try to look at and be like, what is this guy providing my son outside of sports, Right. Even though my son's still really young and my daughter, there still should be something there with that coach. And at that age, it's tough, to teach some of that stuff. But that's what I look at in coaches is what are they teaching outside of the sport or the skill for those kids to go on and become better people. So for those listening, if you are a coach, you are a teacher, we thank you. And I challenge you guys to add that more to your routine, not just focus on the trait or the skill, but, those other areas where some of those kids you're teaching or coaching don't have a relationship with their parents and they're not getting it. And so it'll just help later on down the road.
Yeah. And I, maybe I'm just a meathead, but it's funny because, the coaches and the sensei and, teachers are included, right? But like you said, the ones that have hit me the most have been the coaches, the physicality of it. Because I think some of the stuff that they teach, you can't do the stuff they're trying to teach without getting that kind of stuff. You can't really play a sport, a team sport, without learning, good sportsmanship, or it makes it infinitely more difficult, I think. So, yeah. Hardship was difficult for me. And I don't know what that says about me. I don't know if that says I should view more things as a hardship or if I've just had a very blessed life. I even Googled, hardships, and I saw Buddhism's 8 hardships. I thought it was pretty cool. I want to look into that, which being away from loved ones is one of those. And that's definitely one, that I'm experiencing right now. Cause like I said, it's the first time outside of the Southeast, which is where most of my family lives. And out here, I'm, at least 8 hours away from any family, the support network that I've built all my life and everything. Now, obviously technology makes that a lot easier. They're a phone call away, which is really nice. And being able to take leave and go home and see everybody is definitely an important thing. So that's definitely a hardship. But then I don't even remember what the random thought was, but I had a random thought. Controlling my anger, my emotions, but specifically my anger. It's something that I guess I haven't really had to deal with. I've been taking it for granted, because my father definitely, and my mother too, definitely made me learn, because I was a very angry little redheaded kid, right? And always trying to, confrontation and everything. So I had to learn to control my emotions, specifically anger, because anger is a big one for me.
Yeah, I'll say it again. We're very similar. Like I grew up with a very blessed life, and so even that question for me, let's say at the time when I joined the military, I probably would have sat there and been like, "What? I don't know. Like I had a pretty good high school. Like my parents are together, good relationship with them. I graduated. Nothing crazy happened when I went to high school, and so like when I joined the military, that's when I was sort of like looking at what all my teammates had to put up with. I was sort of like, man, like I don't know, like I had a pretty good life, guys. Like, but then that's why like all my teammates, they referred to me as like a bubble boy, like I grew up in this tiny little bubble town in Northern California, and I didn't really have anything crazy going on. I didn't experience a lot. And then obviously I joined the military and I was like, oh, this is like a city, or this is what it's like to go out. And so there's definitely that time where it's hard sometimes to find those hardships when you are blessed, and you've had a good life. And for some people, they may think they have to have a hardship, but it's more of just understanding like, hey, even without him, you can still do good things. It's not like nothing good is going to happen from nothing bad happening, but it's always, it's just good to hear, it's always nice to be like, yeah, it's just the way life is, and then when those times do come up, you either know like, it's bound to happen, like hasn't happened yet. So it's here. And then you sort of appreciate those times looking back and like, man, it was nice to have those times of just do what I got to do, work, stay focused, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. That's the other side of it. Again, I'm not going to tell anybody I don't have a very blessed life. I love my family. I'm everything very, very good. But I also like to think of hardships as they're part of life. So you can I like the I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure everybody's seen it at this point. But there's a picture, and it's got guy on a bus on a cliff, and like you look towards the cliff, and it's just dark and miserable and depressing.
Oh yeah.
And then you look off the cliff, and everything's sunshine and rainbows, and it's hey, your perspective, which way you're gonna look,
Yeah.
And I like to I like to just keep in mind that hardships are part of life. You got to deal with them, so you might as well try to be happy about it.
Yeah. Nice. So let's talk about where you are now. So for those listening, obviously you can't see Schroll. Schroll is an airman in the Air Force, but he's not your typical airman. So the story of Schroll is great. We love having him here at Dias. And like I told him before, his name was recommended to me by another guy that is the care of Dias, right? Like Gordon's been around a long time at Dias. He's seen a lot of great things. He's done a lot of hard work. And when he gives your name right away, like out of everybody he's worked with, right? He's probably worked with a lot of great people too. He threw your name out, and I was like, yeah, he is definitely a guy where I would love to talk to and get to know. And so if you want to lead with, where you are now, how we met too, we'll talk about that a little bit. What sort of motivates you? And then I always follow up with, why did you join the military too? What did you do before? So
I got you. Yeah. So currently I am a senior airman or staff select. Everybody likes to put that on me. In the U.S. Air Force, I am a jet engine mechanic, aerospace propulsion. So I'm hitting my 3-year mark, actually. November 16th is my 3-year mark for being in the military. And it has been an awesome experience. Awesome experience. Before that, I did, so right out of high school, I went to college, like, so many people my age did, and got my degree in 2008. Haven't used it a day since, but I have it, so that's good. And then I worked at Brinks Armored Trucks for 11 years, and I've had a smattering of other jobs here and there, but the big one, like I said, 11 years at Brinks Armored Trucks, which I absolutely loved. That's an interesting thing, because I've loved every job I've worked at. I worked at Walmart in the tire and lube section, working on cars when I was in college, helped pay my way to college, and I loved it. I loved working at Brinks, but what I found out very quickly was Brinks was a great job. It was not a career, and that was fine for me. I'm I no wife, no kids, no responsibilities really to speak of. So as long as I'm paying rent, taking care of myself, I can just kind of coast, which is what I did for a long time. And so joining the military, the cheeky answer I always give is it was time to grow up and stop being an adolescent man child. 36 years old. Maybe I should actually try something with my life. So, so I finally decided, you know what, this is something I've always wanted to do. I've always talked about it. My dad was he did his 20. There's always been a reason or excuse for me not to do it. Let's go for it. So I started down that road and joined. And like I said, I have everything about it I've enjoyed. The roughness of basic I enjoyed. I enjoyed tech school. My first base, I've really enjoyed the experience. Did 10.5 months in honor guard. That has probably been the most humbling and meaningful thing that I feel like I've done. Dealing with the families. I really enjoy that, and I still actually just did a detail yesterday. I still stay on standby in case they need extra bodies, because I do enjoy it. It's like I said, it's a very meaningful thing to do. So that's kind of really a brief history and where I'm at right now. Planning on commissioning. There's a non-rated board in May that I'm trying to put forward. We'll see how that goes. But so the why did I join? The cheeky answer, like I said, it's time to grow up and stop being an adolescent med child. The more serious answer is kind of the same thing. It's I have been coasting for so long and just doing anything. Like example I like to give my my college girlfriend. She really wanted to be, at first it was a marine biologist, and then it changed, and then she really wanted to be a psychologist, which she is now, which is awesome. And so I was just like, cool. I don't have that, right? My stepmother knew she wanted to be a pediatrician. I had friends that they knew they wanted to be teachers. They have that. I want to do this. I have never really had that. I got things I want to do, I enjoy do, but nothing that's like, this is a career. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do everything towards that. So coasting is the best word I can use for it. I just, coast through life. When I'm, like I said, when I was with my college girlfriend, I just supported her. She wanted to go get her PhD. Cool. I'll work. I'll pay the bills. You go to school, right? And that's awesome. I don't regret that at all. but it does kind of leave where, when the relationship doesn't work out, it leaves, cool, you've got your career, I don't. It's not a bad thing, but I wasn't working on myself. And that's one of the things I learned, arguably too late, but, I'm working on it, is, hey, if I want to be there for the people I love, I have to be better myself, right? You can't fill from an empty cup is one of the ways I like to put it. So that goes a lot into, why I joined. Like, hey, it's something I've always wanted to do. Focus on bettering myself and doing what I do, and being able to be a man who can take care of the people that I love, whether it be an immediate family or my extended family.
A couple follow-on questions with this. I'll just shotgun them to you, and you can answer them as you remember. Why didn't you do OTS? You're killing me. What is honor guard for those listening that might not know? So give honor guard, like, it's praise, right? Like, a lot of airmen that I've seen are always nervous to do honor guard, right? Because one, it's time consuming, and I think they think it's hard, which it is, right? It's supposed to be very disciplined and rudimentary, and you're pristine, you look sharp. So explain honor guard a little bit for those listening that may not know, and I'll do those two right now, and then I'll ask you a couple more.
Okay. Yeah. So in order, why didn't I OTS? Why didn't I come in? Well, I did. I tried. Because my dad went through this process. Like, my dad, he enlisted in the Navy as a corpsman for 10 years. While he was in, he got his nursing degree, and then he finished his contract with the Navy. Was a civilian for a couple months. Came to the Air Force as a nurse, second lieutenant. Ended up ended up retiring as a captain. Right. So he has, some experience. So obviously I lean heavily on him. Hey, what do I do? What do I do? And the his point, which, as usual, he's right about. It's easier to get in as an officer from civilian to directly to officer than it is to be enlisted and go officer. I talked to an officer recruiter. It's 2021, so COVID weirdness. The officer recruiter I talked to had, before COVID, he was only the recruiter for medical officers, only medical, so nurses, doctors, PAs. Right? COVID hit. He was now the only officer recruiter for 4 or 5 states in the Southeast. So I think everybody kind of has a story about how their recruiter kind of didn't tell them the entire truth, right?
Yeah.
And very well may be the case with this guy, but he seemed to not have the time for any kind of BS, right? So he was just like, look, you have my degree is not specialized, so I qualify for anybody who qualifies is what I qualify for. And then, he says he had to wait for something to come up. At the time when I talked to him, the only thing he had was a drone pilot, so there were all these things, and what he told me, and this is the part where I have no idea if it's true or not. What he told me is, like, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 years before you sign and leave, right? So it's a long pipeline, it's a long process. And I was 36 at the time, right? So I was like, okay, I can do that, or I can go ahead and enlist and then work from the inside. So my thought process was, well, let me go ahead and get in. I don't want to wait 3 years, right? Let me go ahead and get in. I like my chances, right? I'm pretty competitive, so I'll just be competitive, and I'll try to overcome that extra difficulty. Which I think, in hindsight, and this might be my rationalization of myself, but I think in hindsight that was the right move, because knowing what I know now and how the package looks and all of the thing, if I would have just filled out before, I'd have been reaching for the awards or the little things, and then I'd have been reaching for certain things. So whereas now I've been in, and I came in with an attitude of, hey, I'm going to apply myself as much as I can, because that was, like I said, that's kind of part of the point of joining the military. And so now that I've done that, I have awards and I have accolades and I have these things that I can put on the package to make it look much, much more competitive. And I'm grateful for all the help that I've gotten from I could list all my leadership, all the people that I've worked with, like you, Gordon, there's so much help in the community that's helped me on that path. So that's awesome. So that's why I didn't go straight to OTS. So hopefully that was the right decision. We're gonna find out. But honor guard. I love honor guard. I haven't spoken to anyone. So before I went, originally they, I'd heard, oh, it's really good for BDZ, and I knew I wanted BDZ, right?
Mm.
So I was like, cool. Let me, we need a volunteer. I'll go, right? They wouldn't let me go. I didn't have my 5 level yet. I still had my on the job training to do. I was like, cool. So that time went. BDZ came. I won BDZ, thank God. Yada yada yada. Came back around. Came to me. They knew I had volunteered before. They're like, hey, you want to go now? Absolutely. Let's give it a shot. I talked to other people in my shop who had been, and every single one of them, it's a great experience to go. Right? So all of them had very positive things to say about it, which I thought was awesome. And so I went, and it fits me. So one of the things I didn't mention, I mentioned my sensei, but I've been training Shotokan karate since 2001. So over 20 years, I've been training Shotokan karate. The similarities between that and the honor guard movements are it's because that's what honor guard is. It's very specific movement. It's very specific. Maintain your bearing. You don't break no matter what, right? So it all came very, very naturally to me. And I really enjoyed it. So I did my 4 months. At that time, it was 4 months. Now it's 6. And they work you. Apparently we have the 9th busiest honor guard in the Air Force. I think it's the most busy in the MADCOM. I think I'm not 100% on that. Because we have Dallas, in our AOR. So Dallas Fort Worth National Veterans Cemetery. They have Monday through Friday, multiple, so we go out there every single day, 3 hours there, 3 hours back. We have the state veteran cemetery here in Abilene that we go to, not every day, but almost every. And then, we have a huge AOR that we cover. So we have a lot of details to cover. And you talk about mentioning to what people don't understand. The honor guard is a congressionally mandated mission, right? So everyone who served honorably is eligible and deserves their military honors. Whether however much they serve. The minimum of the flag fold, flag presentation, tap steam play. So I did the 4 months, and then I was asked immediately just to roll over and to be an instructor for 6 months. So I ended up staying for about 10 and a half months full time over there on loan from my shop. I taught 4 flights of guardsmen. Went on plenty of stuff. I mean, it was a really good experience. One of the things that they use as a kind of a carrot to get people to go is we do some games, right? Football games, baseball games. So I did game 1 of the World Series last year, which was an awesome.
Oh, because the Rangers were in it, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it went into, I think, double overtime. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, we did the colors, and then we went up and sat in the stands, and we had a great time. We've done motocross. We do Cowboys games. I think actually somebody's going to the Cowboys game tomorrow. So that part of it is kind of the fun part of it, right? You do colors, you represent, you try to look good, and you get to get something back out of it, which is really, really cool. But to me, the more important one, and honestly, the part I enjoy more I don't even know how to describe that, but because it's not like, oh, I'm, it's not a real joy, but it's an honor type of thing.
Yeah.
Is to do the honors for the family. Yeah. We do firing party, we do folding the flag, we present the flag, we lay the cast. So that is we carry the casket, right? So all that stuff to me is the most meaningful stuff, and I really, really enjoy it. So and then ancillary benefits. A lot of times you get stuck in your shop, got all the guys in my shot. Well, honor guard, it's always, hey, we need one guy from this squadron, one guy from this squadron, two guys from this squadron, right? So every flight has a smattering of different squadrons. So you get to network, you get to meet new people, you get to talk to them because you're in the van for hours a day. Like I said, we go to Dallas and back almost every day. So that's 3-hour drive there, 3-hour drive back. Sometimes there's everyone's quiet and worn out, but there's a lot of conversations where you get to learn and everything. And that's also one of the reasons I really I realized how lucky I was to have my leadership, right? Because my leadership has been very supportive. Of course, now I let them know as soon as I got here, hey, these are my goals, right? You tell me what I need to do, I will do it, but these are my goals, right? And they have been exceptionally supportive, right? But I've talked to other people where their leadership has not been supportive, and that kind of hurts my soul a little bit because you're in that leadership position. To me, that's a responsibility to take care of the people under you, and there's definitely a certain amount of, there's always going to be that us versus them, oh, my leadership sucks, right? Because I'm the worker, they're the ones in charge, and I have an animosity towards them just because they're over me, right? But that shouldn't be a lot. And some of the stories I've heard, I'm just like, I am grateful that I didn't have that happen, because I would have had to work around it, and I'm confident I could have, but you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, a couple things I'll hit on that is like I have a near and dear to honor guard, right? So like when my grandfather passed, they did the ceremony, and I got to get the flag from them and hand it to my grandma, so that's like my connection with honor guard, it's like, it's right there, like super near and dear to the heart. When I retire, they're going to be there, and it's going to be an amazing experience. And so there are other, things that honor guard does, right? They do retirements, they do all the ceremonies on base. And so people don't realize they're everywhere. We see them everywhere, and sometimes we just miss that. And so that's the tie there. And then the one thing you hit towards the end, which I really love as a leadership trait, is your transparency, right? So you said right away when you got to your base or to your leadership, like, hey, here's my goals. I want a commission. I want to do this. I want to do this. Here's how I got to do it. You're open. Some airmen, not airmen, just people in the military, there's like this conspiracy. If you tell people what you want to do, you're not going to be able to do it, right? Especially when it's not in your job. Because your leadership's going to be like, oh, well, you don't want to do this, but you're working here, so I'm not going to send you here. And you're like, oh, come on. Right. So that is a huge thing. I always try to like nip in the butt. And I've been there. Like when I was early in the B1 community, I was told like, hey, don't tell people what you want to do outside of flying. Just tell them you want to go this path. And I'm like, what if I don't want to? They're like, just don't say what you want to do if you want to go do something. I'm like, that does not make sense.
Yeah.
And then after a while, and I went through this journey, right, of like finding myself, I was like, no, transparency is huge. Yeah. So for those listening, if there's anything you take from this so far, be transparent with your leadership, be transparent with those close to you, your family, your friends. They don't know what they don't know. So if you want to go do these things, you complain about not doing it, and then your boss goes, well, I didn't know you want to do it. It's on you, ultimately. You have to own up to those things. If you're nervous to say it, don't be, because the fear of doubt of not saying something is such a hindrance to so many people's success in their life. The worst thing to say is no. The worst thing to say is like, what they're probably going to say is, hey, not right now, like you, right? Finish your OJT and then go, cool, got it, like I will do that. Then you come back and then you go execute. So I appreciate you doing that. Next topic we'll talk about is your volunteer work, right? So you do a lot volunteer-wise. It's obviously paid off. You got selected for staff. You're 3 years in. That's a great time to get that. For those listening, it's usually around 4 or 5 years where those senior airmen will make staff. So I assume it was your first time too testing?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Which is very rare. The percentage is still pretty low competitive-wise. And so there's like that I don't know, rumor of if you volunteer too much, right? Like, what do people think of you? And what about your work? And you put that in the dirt, right? You do the volunteer, you do the work, you saw the results. So talk about that. What inspired you to do the volunteer stuff for DIAS, the DIAS We Care team, and all the events I always see you at, that you're helping out with? What motivates that?
So volunteer work is so interesting to me because before the military, I never volunteered. I even, like, I remember telling one of my friends, showing him an award I won, and they're like, what is this volunteer you're doing? Like, this is, who are you, kind of thing. But one of the things I like to say about volunteer work, and this is just, from my perspective, is you get the majority of the benefits of volunteer work just by doing it, regardless of your motivation, regardless of the reason you're doing it. Just by doing it, you're getting the majority of the benefits, in my opinion, right? Now, obviously, it's better if you're doing it for the right reasons, but I've also seen, including myself, you do it for not necessarily the wrong reasons, but not the best reasons. And then through doing it, you're like, okay, no, this is awesome. Like, let's keep doing it, right? Because originally, again, like I said, hours away from anybody, that I know. I'm in my dorm room when I first get on base, and they were actually renovating the Soulfire Cafe. And one of the guys I went to tech school with, he hit me up. He's like, "Hey man, wait, why don't you come out?" And it was literally right outside my dorm room. Like, I could open my dorm room and I could see the Soulfire Cafe. So I was like, "Cool, I'm not doing anything else," And so I walked over there, and I think when I got there, I started helping put together the stage, or drill stuff up on the walls, right? Obviously, there's a lot of painting with the weed area. So I did that, and then I just kind of kept doing it, and because what else am I doing? Saturday, I'm either going to be doing that or watching Netflix, play video games, right? So better use of my time, more productive use of my time. So did it, kept doing it, enjoyed it. Gordon is an amazing person, right? Like he's just got one of the biggest hearts I've ever met. He gives, right? I mean, he's been retired I don't know how many years, and he's the only reason the We Care team still goes, right? And then on top of that, his job is working at Hendrick Home for Children with kids, so he's social worker. I mean, he's all about giving. So huge heart, amazing guy. As far as so other motivations for doing it were obviously I like I said, I made my goals clear. What do I need to do? Okay, well, at the time before EPRs, I never had one, but they told me, well, it was your work bullets, your volunteer bullets, and your self-improvement bullets, right? So cool, get some volunteer bullets, awesome. So I'll just keep doing that. I already had my degree when I came in, so I was I did try to start working on my CCAF to complete it, but there wasn't a whole lot like school wise that I could do for that, unless I wanted to start a master's program, which I wouldn't have been able to finish before the required time. So I decided to focus on volunteer stuff, because that was the clearest way to separate myself from my wingman. For the package, right? That's one of the things I say. As far as winning an award or getting an accolade, getting a thing, like, it's nice, and it's nice to be recognized. I'm not going to take that away. But for me, the only reason I really care about it right now is I'm trying to beef up the OTF package, right? Everything I'm working towards that goal, right? So is this going to look on the package, good look on the package? Try to get that. And then, secondarily, other than that, hey, I'll do whatever you need me to do, because, I'm not doing anything else. As far as, it's a really good point you brought up about, like, the stigma of volunteering, right? So you see a lot, and I heard it when I got in, right? As soon as I got to the shop, you got, they made rank because they didn't do their job, right? Because instead of doing their job, they went and volunteered, right? And I'm not saying that is not a problem, right? Because I don't know, but I definitely don't think it's as big of a problem as people think it is and make it out to be, right? Because me personally, like, one of the things that anytime I brief like FTAC for with Gordon or for Gordon about the We Care team, I always make it clear: your job comes first, right? You have to do your job. That's what the Air Force pays you to do, right? That's what you were trained for. They spend a bunch of money on you. Do your job first, then do the extracurricular stuff, right? And I think what happens is people do their job, and they don't want to do the extracurricular stuff. And I get that, right? Again, if I had joined when I was 18 to 20, it'd be a very different path I would have had, most likely, right? I joined at 36. I had a completely different outlook, a completely different mindset and goals than I did when I was younger. So I do not blame the younger airmen for wanting their personal time, and to do what they want to do, and not like, hey, I've already given more. But you also have to understand that your choices have consequences, good or bad. So if you choose to not do the extracurricular activities, don't be mad when somebody else who did choose to do the extracurricular activities gets ahead of you, because they separate themselves. So that's kind of what I try to say. There's like, hey, do your job, right? Because if you do the thing that everybody likes to accuse volunteers of doing, of, oh, I'm not going to do my job, I have this volunteer thing, I'm not going to do my job, and you always dip out of work to go to volunteer thing, then the stigma is kind of earned, right? So that's what I try to make sure to get across to people. Like, hey, make sure you do your job first, and then do the extra.
Nice. All right, well, let's dive into these leadership philosophies, man. It's always a great conversation to get. For those listening, we talk about this every episode, and that's why I started this podcast, was to hear what other people, how they lead, but also to provide other tips for leadership. So my 4 leadership traits are: lead by example in all you do. To be selfless, you have to be selfish. Build relationships based off trust and care, and then challenge the road in front of you, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. You've already hit 2 of them, right? You talked about you can't work with an empty cup, right? Take care of yourself. Boom, check.
Right.
Relationships, trust and care, honor guard. Dude, you're doing it. Boom, check. So out of those 4, which one did you found come pretty natural and what helped? And then which one is tougher and how would you get better at it?
So I would say lead by example is the easiest one for me. Like here's a so, like I said, staff select now, right? So now my leadership, the staff sergeants and the tech sergeants above me are telling me, hey, you need to alter what you do. I was literally told, hey, stop doing so much. You need to delegate, right? And I understand that, right? But one of the difficult things for me is like, hey, can you do this? And then I get, any kind of resistance. It's just easier to do it myself, and I definitely understand that that needs to be handled. I need to work on that. I need to do that. But leading by example to me, like I said, is the easiest, because it's, I'm not going to ask somebody to do something I'm not willing to do. And I don't want to be, I care a little less if I'm viewed as, but by extension, I don't want to be viewed as the person who, I don't do anything, I just tell people what to do, right? Mm-hmm. I remember, so one of my uncles, he had a moving company that he built from the ground up. I think it was around a military base, so that probably helped. But built it up. He got to the point where he wanted to retire, and so he hired some guy at college to manage his company, right, to be the boss. And I remember it was right around the same time my dad was getting restationed from Moody back to Keesler, and he was talking to the movers, just chatting with them. Interesting, about the fatherhood thing. It's so interesting to me. So many things I learned just by listening, just by being around my father, listening to him talk to other people, and hearing that. So I think that's another thing. It's so interesting because you don't realize, like what's that? The internet is both terrible and awesome. But one of the awesome things is, I remember seeing this video of somebody doing push-ups or working out, and they're like, I was about to give up, and then I saw who was watching, and their kid was watching them. Like, well, I got to keep going, and I think that's so awesome. So all that to be said, back to the point, my dad was talking to movers, asking him, what do you think? How do you, how do you like this new guy who's, taking over from my brother's retiring, yada, yada, yada. And the mover was like, I remember him saying, he was very, careful with his wording, but he said, how's a guy who's never packed a box before going to tell me how to do my job, right? So I think that was very impactful, kind of a light bulb memory. And then I remember in the same ballpark of that, when I was working at Brinks, they hired a new manager of the he wasn't ours, he was going to be for some couple states away, but they sent him to us, again, out of college, business degree probably, and they were going to he was going to be the new manager of some branch, somewhere. So they sent him to us for training, and he had to do 2 to 3 weeks at every job. So he hopped on the truck with me, and we were riding around, and I'm teaching him how to do the job, right? And I think that's a huge thing, because then at least, hey, you're not a master of the job.
Yeah.
You haven't done it for, a year, 2 years, 3 years, but you've done it enough that you understand the very, very basics of it. And I think that was a really smart move by whoever decided to do that, so all that's very, very impactful to me, because I don't want, because how else do you get people that you're leading? How do you get their trust?
Yeah, let me ask follow on. This is a great topic right here. The Air Force is weird with their officers and enlisted jobs, right? Because officers will lead jobs they don't do. You're in the maintenance side. You probably have a maintenance officer. He probably doesn't do the job you do. What do you tell someone on both sides, the airmen, to what do you guys expect to see from that officer to show them leading by example but not doing the job? What do you look at, right? Flip that. What do you expect, since you want to transition down this road, right, to be an officer? If you are an officer in those jobs where you can't do it hands-on, what tips do you have for them to show leading by example? This is a great, great topic.
So from the enlisted side,
yeah,
speaking to officers, one of the things I've heard most consistently, so anytime, this is such an interesting thing, because anytime I hear people complaining, I always try to get to the bottom of it, right? I always say, okay, hey, it's hard to tell people to put the emotions aside and just talk to me. So you have to have a conversation, but I try to get through and to understand where the core of the problem is, because, if you're upset, there's probably a reason you're upset, even if you don't understand it and you can't articulate it, right? It takes a certain amount of emotional intelligence, emotional maturity to be able to sift through that and really understand, hey, what is actually upsetting me right now? There's things popping into my head. So one of the things I always ask when they're upset, like, hey, well, what's going on? What would you like them to do? Right? Like, what would make it better for you? Right? And one of the most consistent ones is, the only time we see them is when they're yelling at us. We don't see them unless something's wrong. Right? So when I first got here in the shop, I had an LT who, he would come out, and he would say, hey guys, I just want to watch y'all work. I want to learn. I don't, I want to understand, because I'm briefing this to the commander and I have no idea what's going on. So I'm not here to get y'all in trouble. I just want to watch and learn a little something. So if I have a question, y'all could just help me out, right? That, even if that was just lip service, it goes a long way. And I don't think it was, right? I think he was earnest in it, but even if it was just lip service, then it goes a long way, because we're seeing his face in a positive way, so going back to the volunteer stuff, one of the things that's so good about the We Care team, and one of the selling points that we like to have, is every project that you work on, you get an LOA that we write up. Gordon writes up in a military fashion, right? It's very, hey, what was the effect? How much? Like, easy to make it into a bullet or a narrative, right? And sends it to your leadership. So it might take you a while to get it, but it's good, because your first shirt, hopefully your commander, your chief, your flight chiefs, they all see it, and they see your name in a positive way. Whereas a lot of times, from my understanding, your commander, the only time your commander may see your name is in a bad way. You get in trouble, right? So putting it in a positive way is huge, right? So same thing. Like, hey, we're seeing our leadership in a positive way, just chilling. I have a master sergeant who is awesome. He comes around and he'll just chit chat. I've talked to him about, philosophy and stuff like that, right? Like, he'll just come and we'll talk about stuff. And again, it's that showing face and having conversations in a positive way, so that they see you not just when something's wrong and they're getting in trouble. That's a big one. As far as what, and so like, I want to try to take that with me when I hopefully do commission. I don't want to be absent, right? I want to be hey, I want people to see me. My current commander is he's I've had great interactions with him because he's done stuff like that, right? I've seen him come out. He came out to unfortunately he was only one of 2 commanders that came to the Weak Hair Team annual awards banquet, right? But he was there, right? He came out. He brought his family out to the Chili Bowl that the Weak Hair Team was volunteering at, and several of our squadron's guys were there. So seeing him there, like, hey, like that, there's an appreciation there. Even though he's not doing anything, you don't have to do anything. You're showing face. You see that that type of thing. So I think that for both of them is probably a big one, because that's what like I said, that's what they want to see that I've heard most. And I think that's probably the best thing to do to try to bridge those gaps. As far as like what I also try to tell my fellow airmen when they're mad about something is like, hey, we don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
Like there's definitely an information gap, right? That's one of the things, I learned that many years ago. And like, so Brinks, for example, if they did this whole, like, they got switching to, instead of, we used to write everything on paper. We pick up money, we write how much, we bring it back, they have to type it in, right? And then they got these little scanners where instead of writing it down, they have to type it in when we get back. We just scan it in. Well, now they don't have to type it, right? Well, when we first got that, of course, changed. There's resistance to change. So everybody's complaining, oh man, this is extra work for me. I don't want to do this, yada, yada. Because at first there was a learning curve. We had to write it down and we had to scan it because we weren't sure the scanners were going to work, right? So everybody's complaining. And I'm like, hey, how much time is it saving the office not having to type every single one of these in, right? Sure, let's say it's costing us an extra 30 minutes during the day. Well, it's saving them how many hours typing in everybody's, right? Like, so understanding the big picture is something that people don't, especially when you're younger, right? Like, I didn't understand that when I was younger.
Yeah.
So it's easy to, oh, well, this is stupid because it's making my job more difficult. Okay, that's one aspect of it. Well, what about, is it making someone else's job easier or not, right? And I'm not saying that, that all leadership is flawless and never makes a mistake, right? That's obviously not true. But I always try to encourage people who are like complaining about, oh, this is a stupid decision. Why are we doing it this way? Hey, it might be stupid, right? But you don't know that because you don't have all the information, right? That's a hard pill for some people to swallow. But those are the big things that I would say on that topic.
Yeah, I think to flip the script there to help the younger level, and I challenge those listening, if they are officers in this role or in that position, go out and talk to your airmen about what you do on the daily basis, right? Because they don't know, they don't know. Right. So if I'm like, when I was a flight commander, now that I'm in this role, I make sure I go out and I tell like the airmen I lead or the guys I'm in charge is what else I do. Like, because they don't see it, or they may be like, hey, where's Manny? Where's Snare? Why isn't he doing this? But if I come in and go, hey guys, I was doing this today, I was doing this, sorry this came up, they're like, okay, got it,
Right.
Like, so I'm huge on putting all of my stuff on a calendar for everybody to see. Go to the gym, when I record my podcast, when I go to lunch with my kids, when I go pick up my kids, on there, so that they see, right, the other things I'm doing, even if it's just like basic stuff, they can be like, oh man, well, he's doing this, doing that, he's doing this. Okay, we understand now. Instead of like, oh, where's he at?
Right.
The assumption of not knowing is going to cause a lot of chaos. And so that's usually my challenge now to people out there is as leaders progress, they should still be going out and telling people what they're doing to show them what the rest of their day is. And I tell a lot of my airmen, I'm like, hey guys, my day is usually checking a lot of emails, confirming a lot of stuff, meeting a lot of people, going to meetings. Just that little part lets them know, like, okay, it's a little different than I thought,
Right.
Maybe I just thought you were doing this. And then when they do come out, the airmen are like, oh, this is usually the time where he says he does this or does, but he's here. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, cool. Like he's taking that time. Or when they see him on the weekend, they go, oh, it's cool that he's out here because I know his schedule is super busy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. So which one, I guess if you want to hit on which one you have that you would want to work on and how do people work on it, and then any other leadership traits to follow.
So the one that I probably need to work on the most is being selfish. I've never heard it put the way you put it.
It's a tricky one.
Being selfless by being selfish,
Yeah.
I'm the type, like, I will literally, like, if I go over to my buddy's house, I'll do his dishes before
I know you're very
own.
careful. You helped me move into my house.
Yeah, right. I will help my friends or other people long before I'll do it for myself.
Yeah.
Now, and some of that, like I said, I live alone. I'm doing away. It might be different if I had a family to take care of. But that's definitely one thing that probably I need to take a little bit better care of myself as far as that. And like I said, that kind of connects back to what I was talking about, why I joined. Like, hey, let's work on myself and try to be better so that I can be better for other people is at least where my mentality's at. I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but that's where I'm at right now. So
nice. Were there any leadership traits you saw that stood out to you as we wrap up here? Or
There were the three ones that really kind of stood out to me. Have a why was the first one. I love. Well, there's a lot of Nietzsche quotes I really like, but the he who has a why can bear any how is such a powerful quote to me. Because if you don't have a why, if you don't have a reason, if you don't have a purpose, it's easy to give up, to give in to whatever, or the other one, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like having that reason and that purpose is huge, for motivation, for having goals, like whatever it is. I don't think the importance of that can be overstated.
Yeah,
it's definitely one. Always be learning. That's an interesting one because. Again, joining the military at 36 years old, hey, it's time to learn a whole lot of new things. When I joined, after I joined, I went back to home to, for RAP. And I was talking to a buddy who had been in the Navy and for a few years. And he was my age. And he was just like, I can't imagine going through basic at my age. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're insane, So, and that's fair. I'm a little crazy. So the learning is because it's so easy to get complacent.
It is,
especially we live in such a wonderful time that has so many conveniences. Life is easier than it's ever been, so it's easy just to go through day-to-day life and think the worst part of your day is traffic. That's pretty easy, so it's easy to just be like, okay, cool. I know everything I need to know. I don't need to learn anything else. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people kind of get complacent in that respect, and they don't start, including myself. Like, I'm not, like I said, I coasted for many years, right? Not to say I didn't, learn anything new, but I certainly didn't push myself as much as I could have, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge one. And then the third one, I actually put three of them together. Because I think they're all very connected. Is fail, be bold with risk, and make decisions, right? So again, speaking of myself included in this, but also I see a lot of people who are so scared to fail that they get frozen in their decision. They refuse to make a decision. And one of the things that one of the quotes that I really like that kind of points that out is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So, and failing to make a decision or failing to act is a decision, right? You're familiar with the trolley problem, I'm assuming, right?
You get the kid like there's two like ways to go, and yeah.
Yeah, so the trolley, you have two train tracks, five people on one on the other, and it's gonna kill the five unless you pull the lever, in which case it'll kill the one. Like it's a moral, it's a Kobayashi Maru. It's a moral, you can't win. Failing to act is a decision. Failing to do anything is definitely a decision. So I think, learning to make the decision, right? Understand the risk. Don't be careless with it, but make the decision and understand that, hey, you're going to fail more than you succeed. But if you never try, you're never going to succeed. So.
Yeah, I was on my run this morning with Houston, and he was talking about, why did I cross train and why did I do all this stuff? What if I would have got selected? What would my life would have been? And then he was like, well, I'm thinking about doing this, but I don't know about this, or what if this happens? And I was like, bro, just go do it.
Mm-hmm.
The act alone is going to put you so much further than the thought of not doing it. Like, don't worry about what the worst conditions are going to be if you get selected or if this happens. Just go act on it.
Right.
You will grow and you will experience so much more just by trying.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if you know it's going to be hard, or if you know it's going to be stressful on the family? You don't know unless you go do it.
Right.
Worst case, like me, you don't get selected and you learned a crap load. You competed against all these young guys. You reestablished yourself. You found yourself right. You still got something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that right there is gold. I tell so many people, I was just talking to somebody, a little bit ago about something they were thinking about going to do, but they weren't going to do it. I was like, just go do it. I don't care. Yeah. If you fail, at least you attempted and tried and you learned and you understood. Worst case is you make it, and you did it.
Right. Nike's had it right for a long time. Just do it,
The fear of thought of what other people think or not doing things is one of the worst things our brain does to us, right? Like, if there was a way to stop thinking and just doing, man, it would be phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, I love Houston. I did an honor guard with Houston.
So I brought you up today, and I thought that's how you guys knew each other. He earned his book today, so we talked about being a Buffalo. I don't know if you saw my post, but
not yet.
Yeah, so I'll wrap it up with this, with what we did today. So obviously we did the 9-mile run. He joined me. I didn't know what to expect with him. First time he's ran 9 miles. I didn't know that till after. But anyways, the thunderstorm's coming, right? Like it did every Friday morning. And I told him, I was like, bro, this is going to be a fun run if it was like last Friday, because I ran through a thunderstorm and it was amazing. So right before a thunderstorm hit, I'm like, hey, dude, have you ever heard the story of the buffalo? He's like, no, what? I was like, do you know why the buffalo is so like prized and valued, and why Andy Frisella has it like on his hat? And people always ask, he's like, and we're running, it's raining, it's about to get crazy. And he's like, no. And I was like, the buffalo is prized and valued because when a storm happens, it goes straight through it. Unlike humans or cows or deer, where we skirt around it, or we wait, or we figure out another path, which is going to take longer and be harder, the buffalo just goes straight through it. And I was like, do you know what happens? He goes, what? It's shorter. The pain is shorter. The journey is shorter. And they get out on the other side without a scratch. Or they're just done, right? And he's like, oh, yeah. And so the storm hits right after this, dude. And this morning was worse than last week because it got windy. And it was at mile 6. We're going into 7, we're dying. And then it clears up. And we get done. I was like, bro, what'd you think about that buffalo? He's like, yeah, dude, we went right through it. I was like, yeah, we could have stopped when it got bad. We could have waited for it to clear up. It would have made our day longer. So my post this morning was like, and the book I gave him, I put in there, I put, be a buffalo, and it was just cool for him. And he was like, yeah, like, that was pretty cool, and I could tell he's sort of like, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, that's odd. It's so funny. One of the things that occurred to me a few years back was, truth comes in many forms. I mean, something as simple as kids' fairy tales or books. I think a lot of people need to read the Boy Who Cried Wolf, a couple more times, or The Little Engine That Could is a great, I mean, all the like these things, they're so simple, and I think we take them for granted. because they seem overly simple. But I also think that those truths were hard learned by those who came long before us.
Yeah.
And now we're taking those truths for granted that were gained through hard work, blood, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing for people to think about.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure the guy who wrote or gal that wrote Little Engine That Could, their R-rated version of it that really happened would have been a lot worse as a book. But they had to figure out some way to get the story across, right? So they're like, right. How do I take my experience, which was horrible,
right,
give it a nice kid's twist? And I don't know how it happened. Maybe they're just sitting there. They're like, let's just write a story about a little engine that was coming up a hill and it was struggling. And then it gets to the top. Yeah. But that's like the 5% truth of my story,
Yeah. It's so good.
Well, cool. What book do you have that you brought for those to learn from?
So that's a tough one for me. I don't read nearly as much as I want to. That's something I need to work on. But so I have three things. The first one is not a book, a poem. If by Rudyard Kipling. It's my father's favorite poem, and consequently, it's my favorite poem. It is so good. If you've never read it, definitely read it. It's something that it doesn't matter what is going on in my life, what kind of difficulty, what kind of problem, there's always a line in it that is applicable. So it is so good. Just cannot recommend that enough to people. The second one is so when I was in high school, I went to Catholic school, so we had religion class. Well, one of my religion classes, I think I was a sophomore. We had our religion teacher was a young guy who was he was working on either his master's or his PhD in psychology, and so he took the book The Road Less Traveled. And basically, we had the entire semester just going through that book, and he was breaking it down psychologically. I imagine like whoever he was being taught by, when he was doing his master's or PhD, I'm sure that influenced it. But it was that was a very influential time for me, going through that, and learning, different ways of thinking about things and different perspectives, right? And then more recently, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life and Antidote to Chaos. One of my best friends, he found that and he put me on it, and he can't speak highly enough of it. It saved his life. It put him on a better path. Unfortunately, that's one of those that he didn't know his father, right? And that's one of the things that made me realize, talking to him and getting to know him and growing closer with him. He learned things in his late 20s, early 30s that my father taught me in my teens, right? Doesn't mean I learned them in my teens, but he taught me in my teens, right? So, and we've talked about that, and he's got a 1.5-year-old now, and he's hard on. He's like, that baby is going to have a daddy. I don't care what happens between me and his mother. That baby's I'm going to be in that baby's life, and that is so awesome to me, and that moves me so much. Like I said, again, anytime I see stuff like that, fatherhood, that's, if anything's going to get me, that's going to be it. So yeah, those three are the ones that I recommend.
That the Jordan Peterson one, I have it on my shelf. I haven't read it yet. I think I started, and it's a deep book, like
a deep one. Yeah. I want to read his Maps to Meaning, which I don't know if you've ever heard him talk about it, but he talks about Maps to Meaning. That's like his life's work. He worked on that for years, and like crazy how like he would write a sentence, and he'd write like 3 versions of the sentence, and he'd make sure he picked the best version of the sentence. So that book, he talks about how that book is very difficult to read, but he used it to teach his college classes. But he talks about how that one's difficult to read, and then he talks about how the 12 Rules for Life is an easy read.
It's easier.
That's what he calls that, and if he calls that an easy read, I don't know how hard Maps to Meaning is, but I want to read it either way. So yeah.
Nice. The book I brought, and that's the one I'm starting with my airmen this month, is Brief. And there's a good podcast. The author is Joseph McCormack. He's got a podcast out there. It's like 15-minute episodes on very simple executionable tasks, which I love. And every episode he talks about this book, and I've listened to it for like a year. So finally I was like, gotta buy this dang book.
Yeah.
I bought it. And it's funny, whenever I post books, I'll get people that reach out to me and go, oh man, it's a great book. I love it. Help me do this. I'm like, damn it. Why am I finding out about this after I buy it? You need to tell me all your secrets now. But anyways, when I get feedback from other people, it's good. So this is the one we're starting with a few airmen. I have to hand them out this weekend, and we'll do like some weekly meetups. But it's a good book because it's executable, right? There's things you can take forth and go conquer and execute on, which is what I really like in books. Then there's books that you just learn from, right? And you just understand, like 12 Rules of Life. History books are great ones like that. So I bounce back and forth between like execute and learning, sort of on my focus areas. But that's the book I brought. I'll leave those both in the show notes for everybody with the links on the Amazon too. All right. Other than that, my man, do you have any last final shots?
I don't think so. Nothing I can think of. What about you?
No, man. I have a good title. I'll run it by you and tell me what you think. It's Get Out and Care.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah, so I try, the Dice Care team, get out. We talked about that. I wrote that down. I was like, I think that'll go pretty good. So.
Yeah, that's a good one. It might be better for Gordon, but yeah, no, that's a good one.
But yeah, that's what I got. Other than that, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person again. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, stay on for a little bit. I'll finish recording, and I'll let you get on with your day.
Thanks, sir.